Hello, Card Runners Training. This is John, or also known online as DrewPeacoq8. I'm here with part 2 of my barreling video. So if you haven't checked out part 1, it really lays the foundation for how I view and the decisions I choose to make, or the variables that I take into mind when I decide if I'm going to be barreling against certain types of opponents, things like that. So if you've missed part 1, it's good. Check it out. And this is part 2, where I'm finishing up with some other hand examples on when to barrel and why. So we'll get started. This is our third hand of barrel bluffing. Let's see. So this is a 6-max table. I have a lot of chips and can apply a lot of pressure to these stacks. So I'm going to be opening here with the King 10. And similar to the first hand, we have an assumed yellow tag player here, which means basically they call too much pre-flop and usually help you maximize their losses post-flop. That being said, let's see, we have a small sample, but they don't love folding to c-bet, and they don't love folding their big blind either. So that means that they're going to have a much wider range going to this flop. That being said, I'm going to for sure be c-betting this flop, expecting to take it down a lot of the times. And if I just get called, especially given the fact that there's some draws on this board, I expect this type of player to protect a queen real strong. That being said, if I bet here half potish or below, there'll be 20-some thousand in the pot. They have 84,000. I think that's going to incentivize them more than enough with a queen to just stick their stack in the middle. So if they do decide to call here, I'm expecting them to have some weak marginal hands that can't stand up to pressure. So they check, of course. It's courtesy. I bet. And here, actually, you'll see, if you saw the first hand, I didn't decide to go to the bigger size. And against this weaker player, I explained it prior, this is probably because I'm for sure planning on barreling this person. And also, it makes it harder for people to check shove when you bet so small, because you make it less worth their shove from a profit standpoint, because you're putting less chips into the pot. And also because the bet is so small, again, it keeps people's ranges wide. They might even start peeling 3s, 2s, 4s, 5s, especially players like this, just because we'll see what comes for this small bet. But they don't know how effective barreling is going to be when they just call this type of bet. So I will do this against some thinking players as well, but I have to keep in mind that against thinking / capable aggressive players, that they're going to raise that bet a lot. So I definitely do that bet on boards like this, or people who I think are going to raise it to induce further action. But against this type of player, I just assume they're going to be calling a lot. Turn bricks out, they check, and let's see what sizing I decided to go with here. And then here, a little bit bigger of a sizing, still under half pot. I think this is fine. Really, the goal here is to apply enough pressure to get a fold. So really understanding where that point is what's most important here. So like I said on the flop, if we add my 35 and 14 here, it's closer to a half potish type of overall sizing that I've put into the pot thus far, which is what I thought would get them to check shove a queen on the flop. But now we're on the turn, and they've continued with what is definitely a weaker range. So we barrel, expecting to get a lot of folds here, and they do fold. So as you can see, really now there's been 2 times where it's this type of player, and as I noted in the bluffing part, these more passive players are also good candidates for value betting, and in that instance I may adjust my bet sizings differently. In this situation, it's definitely going to be unbalanced in some spots and easier to read for some thinking players, but again, against weaker players whose strategy primarily revolves around the value of their hands and the board, then taking exploitive lines really, I don't think, matters. It's once you start taking exploitive lines against players who can exploit you when it really starts to become a problem.